all your stuff. What can figure it out? That's how it chooses you.
Why, hello, Teresa.
Hi, Claire.
What is happening with you? You texted me some terrible sounding stuff.
I have a rib that is out of place. It has been out of place for a while, and my body has fully compensated around it, but it hurts. I tell you that I have a spot in my back, right? That just always hurts. And I've had work done on the spot that doesn't do anything. And I started pressing on the front, which is what you do. If the back hurts, press on the front, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit. And I could feel how much taller this one rib is than all of the ribs around it on that side, and then all of the ribs on the other side. And I was like, oh, that explains so much. And so I've been working on the muscles that are tightened around it to loosen them up to try and get it back in place.
Yeah.
And because of that, all the musculature in my shoulder girdle is angry because it's having to move in different ways. Ways that it's supposed to move, but it's really gotten used to this pathological way of being. And so I woke up this morning with an earache in my right ear because of all the changes here. So it's ultimately a very good thing, but I'm very tired today and sore. Happy to be talking to you, but I'll be making faces, I think, while we're recording.
Consider yourselves warned.
That's right.
This is a 20% Teresa episode. 180% Claire.
That's right.
That's what that means.
The best kind of episode.
You know what I'm good at? Overcompensating.
You know what I'm good at? Falling apart. We're such a good team.
We are a good team. Well, I'm glad you made it here.
Yeah. I texted you. I was like, just be aware. And you're like, no problem, because you're very loving and supportive. And I was like, thank God. I can just bring whatever is actually happening to the table today. I saw our friend of the podcast, Sandra, this morning.
Oh, yeah.
Her husband, Sean, had loaned us a microphone before COVID hit. And we've had it since then. We used it for the episode where Liz talked to us about what it's like to teach art and the things that she finds beautiful in that. And it has been in my closet ever since. And you texted me yesterday and you're like, hey, do we still have that? And I was like, we absolutely do. I know exactly where it is. I would very much like to return it.
All is well. Thank you for taking that back to them. That was very helpful and needed at the beginning of all of this. So
yeah, got to say hi and chat for a little bit with Sandra, which was really nice. This is a beautiful morning, too. They just painted their house beautiful sky, robin's eggy blue.
It looks great, doesn't it?
It looks so good. While we were sitting out on her porch, someone drove by, and they live in a really tiny, small street neighborhood, Someone drove by and stopped and said, your house is the best color house I have ever seen. Thank you so much for bringing so much joy to your neighbors. It was she really gassed her up. It was really great. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. I saw that color this week. Sandra and I had coffee, and I just thought it was so beautiful. And she said she's planning on doing kind of a bright yellow trim and I think a yellow door, which will be even sweeter. I think it's cool when your house from the outside expresses your personality and says, hey, guess what? Some cool motherfuckers live here.
I was a block and a half away, and I saw that color, and I was like, I bet that's Sandra's house. And then I was like, yep, there it is.
Well, I had a busy social week for the first time in forever. And when I say busy, I mean 3 engagements,
That is busy, though.
It is. The rest of the time I worked and then tried to figure out how to use zucchini in every possible application.
That, oh my God, the trying to figure out how to use zucchini, that binds humanity together right there. Are you a human being? Have you ever had to figure out how to cook zucchini 17 different ways because the garden gave you so much of it? Yeah. That's good. I love that.
I think I've had it in about 5 meals this week, so. And it's funny because I grew it myself, and because it's zucchini, I think that whatever I do with it is healthy.
Yeah, sure.
No matter what I do with it. Last night, I found this recipe for zucchini fritters, and it had just a ton of feta cheese and dill and garlic and scallion in it. And then you just fry up fritters with the shredded zucchini, and it was delicious. And while I recognize rationally that it was not healthy, I was like, hey, I grew this. It's healthy, okay?
It's a vegetable. This is a vegetable-based dish. I mean, sure, cheese and frying and whatever, but vegetable.
Totally counts as a vegetable. My heart doesn't know the difference.
I really love that about zucchini and squash in particular. Like, if you get them just a little happy, they will give you so much. They're like, here. Someone asked me once why you would eat the flowers, because then you don't get the fruit. And I'm like, yeah, but do you know how many fruit these things make? Like, you have to eat the flowers if you're going to survive, because otherwise they'll take over your house.
It's true. And I think I said this before, but there really is something valuable in a vegetable that will just give and give and give, even if it's not the most romantic vegetable, right? It's not a tomato. It's not a pepper. It's not a melon. But you know what? It's there and it loves me.
That's right. If it's a question of biomass, zucchini has your back.
If anyone has zucchini recipes that they love, besides fritters and just generally frying them, please email us at itchoosesyoupodcast@gmail.com or tweet at us at itchoosesyu.
We're so good at Twitter. That's me. I looped Claire into that and she didn't even protest because that's how good a friend she is. I'm supposed to be the tweeter and I don't do it. So
it's because you're the pithy one. It's your own fault.
Well, and also because you are the supreme visual thinker. You've showed me some of the photos you've been taking and they are stunningly beautiful. So of course you have to be the Instagrammer.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Hey everyone. Welcome to the podcast. It Chooses You. Buzzing. I'm Claire Patton.
Sure. I'm Teresa Sparks. Claire and I make each other laugh, and we hope you like it. We also talk about things we enjoy, and we hope you enjoy them too.
The most important thing you need to know about us is that we often suffer through physical agony while recording this podcast just for you. Please remember to like, subscribe, and most importantly, download our episodes if you enjoy this. It helps us spread the word to other people just like you. Thanks.
So, I'm very excited. We have not spoken about what you're going to talk about today, so it's a surprise for me.
Let's get this thing going. I got a surprise for you, Teresa.
Claire.
Dear audience, today I'm going to tell you the story of two incredible women and their unlikely friendship. I'm talking about Eleanor Roosevelt and Ludmila Lady Death Pavlichenko.
Okay. Do we get to call her Lady Death the whole time? Because that's awesome.
We can. I'm down for any title that begins Lady. We've already discussed how much I love Lady Hawk. Now we've got Lady Death.
That's right. I forgot about the saga of Otter and Lady Hawk.
Scree! I don't know what sound an otter makes.
Little like that or something? Little rodenty noises.
I just wanted to give everyone a warning. I'm going to be talking a little bit about specific horrors of war. I'm not going to go into super detail, but if that kind of stuff might trigger you, you might be better off skipping ahead a few minutes. Ludmila Pavlichenko was born Ludmila Belova in the Ukraine in 1916. Her mother was a teacher, and her father worked in a factory. As she was growing up, her father eventually got a job as an executive, and this meant the family had to move annually. So every year, she's giving up her friendships, she's giving up her school, the town that she knows, and just completely starting over. I just think that really probably sucked as a child.
Yeah.
Growing up, she was considered a tomboy because she'd rather be outside doing awesome shit, playing with the boys and competing with them instead of staying inside. And I don't know.
If the choices are climbing trees and needlework, the choice is clear.
No question. She was also very competitive and extremely athletic.
Yeah.
All around the kind of chick we would have hung out with when we were kids. When Ludmila was 14 years old, her parents moved to Kiev. And around that time, a boy in her neighborhood started bragging about what a good shot he was. And she was like, maybe, but I'm pretty sure I can do anything you can do. And I can do it better because I'm a badass. So she actually joined a shooting club.
Yeah.
And it turned out she had a natural talent for marksmanship and just won medal after medal after medal. Just like stacking them up.
Yeah, she just walks up and just raises her arm and like vaguely looks at the target and fires and it's in the bullseye.
And those medals are just stacking up in the corner and her mom is like, Ludmila, pick those goddamn medals up. And she's like, Mom, I'm not going to. And her mom's like, well, you need to. And she's like, no. And she's like, well, do it for the Soviet Union. And Ludmila's like, okay. Your country needs you to clean those up.
Your country needs you to clean your room. And she says, I don't have to clean my room because I'm a sharpshooter. So you should really not tell me to do things I don't want to do.
Ludmila married Alexei Pavlichenko in 1932 when she was just 16 years old. But this was pretty common practice at the time, so not weird.
I mean, a little weird.
Yeah.
A little weird.
Yeah. They had a son together named Rostislav, but the couple didn't stay married for very long because they got married when they were 16, and you hardly know who you are at that point.
Your brain is not fully developed yet.
I mean, I'm like 25 and I don't know who I am.
Oh my God. Are you 25? I didn't realize you were so much older than me.
I'm not 25. Again, they didn't stay married too long. After they got divorced, Ludmila started working in an arms factory in Kiev. So now not only is she a really great shot, she's learning the mechanics of firearms, like how to, I don't know, fucking make them.
She's like, I got the end product, no problem. I know what we're supposed to do with these, but I'm going to now backfill the case and learn how to do all of the, I'm going to grow my own gunpowder.
In 1937, at the age of 21, Ludmila began to study history at the University of Kiev with the intention of becoming a teacher. While she was there, she also joined the track team as a sprinter and pole vaulter because, again, badass. See, badass. In 1941, Ludmila was 24 when the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union, and not long after, they attacked Kiev. And during the Battle of Kiev, the Nazis attacked from both the north and the south of the city. Her university was blown up. She was walking through a city with bombs falling all around her. She saw dead babies, children, women raped, bodies of friends burned, and hung by the side of the road. So Ludmila tried to sign up and join the infantry. At this time, women were technically allowed to serve, but it was generally discouraged. They tried to convince her to become a nurse instead. And she was like, nah. Here, I actually brought all my marksmanship medals with me, so you can peruse those at your leisure. These were a great source of tension between my mother and I because I didn't want to clean them up when I was little. But now I'm grown up, I know how to clean, and I'm also an excellent marksman. So they were like, oh, actually, she's probably a badass. We should let her do what she wants to do. They decided to give her a chance, and she was sent to a sniper school. The following year, in 1942, an all-female sniper school would be set up.
Cool.
Yeah, I want to go to that all-female sniper school. Just to meet people.
Yeah. Right?
Don't even give me a gun. Just let me meet these people.
That's the kind of party I want to go to. What do? I'm a sniper. Oh, gosh. Tell me everything.
But at the time, there was no female sniper school, so Ludmila went to the regular sniper school, which was all men, and as you can imagine, they did not make it easy for her. She was teased and bullied the entire time. She was given her test to become a full-fledged sniper in the Red Army. And this test was that she was ordered to kill 2 German soldiers that were standing in the field. This was her chance to prove herself. If she failed, she would be sent home. Now, shooting 2 people in a field is not easy, because even if you have really good aim and you hit one, the other soldier would be alerted and would either take cover or perhaps start shooting back at you. It's not an easy task. It's also not easy because Ludmila had never killed anyone before. But I would imagine that all she did was think back to the Battle of Kiev and all the horrible things she saw and draw on that deep, deep well of hatred and despair that was inside of her because of these events. She shot. She killed the 2 German soldiers with 2 quick headshots. She passed the test, but she drew enemy fire. She was able to escape, and later she said this was a terrifying experience, her trial by fire. But she was now a Red Army sniper. So she was sent to the front in Odessa. During the siege of Odessa in 1941, Ludmila served as a sniper, lying in wait for hours on end, not moving. She recorded 187 kills within 2 months. And she said that she was driven by an extreme hatred for the Nazis.
I mean, it just sounds like she's just sleeping and shooting. She's just in a place, people don't know she's there, and she wakes up occasionally to see if anyone's head is available.
Basically. One day, she was hiding in a tree when an Axis sniper spotted her and started firing at her. So what did she do? She intentionally fell out of her tree and played dead while the battle raged all around her, and her comrades are falling left and right. And she just laid there. She must have been terrified. She waited until nightfall when she snuck back to camp, where everyone thought she had been dead, was like, what are you? So at that point, they started calling her Lady Death. Of course they did.
I love it. She's like, you got me. Ow. Oh no. I'm expiring. And then you just wait for 10 hours until the battle's over and you stand up and brush off your pants and head back to camp.
All your fellow soldiers are sitting around the fire going, I guess the woman's dead. And she comes walking out of the fog and smoke, like covered in dirt. big, dirty, grimy, bloody boots. And they're like, "It's Lady Death." And she's like, "Fuck yeah, it's Lady Death. Someone get me a vodka." At that point, her unit was transferred to Sevastopol, and there her kill count rose to 257. At this point, she was assigned a very, very dangerous job of being a counter sniper. So it's her in a tree, counter sniping another sniper in a tree. Now, she just had this experience of being almost taken out by another sniper. So this is obviously much more difficult than picking up unaware soldiers in a field somewhere. She'd lay in position for, on average, about 15 to 20 hours in a standoff with another sniper, waiting for them to make a mistake.
Yeah.
And there was actually a lot of strategy behind counter-sniping. The enemy sniper would usually employ different tactics to try and trick her to give her position away. So one thing they'd often do would be to throw out a tin can, and if she shot at the tin can, they would know what her position was. Mm-hmm. One soldier even threw out his pet cat. The idea being, it's safe, there's a cat here. Surely there are no soldiers about. But she didn't fall for it.
Also, the cat is like, "Hey, don't do it, lady. Hey, lady, he's right there." Fucker, I thought we were friends.
Yeah.
And the cat makes its way over to her and whispers all the enemy secrets to her.
So she'd basically wait them out, not fall for their tricks. And once the enemy sniper thought the coast was clear, he'd stand up and she'd get him with a headshot. By the way, while she waited there, she had no food or water. One of the snipers she took out took 3 days of her waiting in position. I'd be like, "Can someone get me some Taco Bell? Please. Can someone just bring me a quesarito, a Mexican pizza, something?"
I'm not picky. I've been laying in my own urine and feces for 3 days.
I mean, it really is a test of endurance.
But it's an endurance of stillness, and that's why it's so interesting. It's like, how long can you be perfectly still and hidden and yet aware of your surroundings? Like, oh, it's so cool.
I just imagine her laying there and just thinking to herself, "Lady Death, Lady Death." During one particular skirmish, every single senior officer in Ludmila's unit was killed. Her entire group fell into just absolute chaos. Nobody knew what to do. No one knew where to go. No one had a plan. So, of course, Ludmila starts shouting out orders. She came up with a plan, and she was like, "Okay, here's what we're going to do." And, of course, the soldiers are a bunch of men, so they're like, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to listen to you. Finally, one of the other soldiers said, "Look, she has the balls of a man." And everybody else was like, true. Okay, we'll follow her. She led her unit to safety, and they all escaped and survived.
That's awesome. See, that was her first follower. The first guy who's like, "Listen to her." And everyone's like, "Okay, we'll listen to her."
Ludmila was promoted to lieutenant soon after that, and her reputation grew. Her Nazi kill count rose to 309. During battle, the Nazi soldiers would call her by name, threatening to cut her into 309 pieces.
She's like, it's gonna be 310 soon, motherfucker.
I think this sounds terrifying, but it didn't affect her because she later said that she knew if they were calling her by name, they were fucking scared of her. When threats didn't work, the Nazis switched to trying to bribe her, offering her chocolate to switch sides. And she was like, "Bitch, I don't need your fascist chocolate. I have the vodka of freedom." A year into her role as a sniper, she met and married another sniper, Alexei Kitsenko. I saw a picture of them, and they were a beautiful couple. She looks like Elizabeth Moss, and he looks like Daniel Craig. Hot.
Also, very similar worldview, and similar amount of stamina for the same boring yet nerve-wracking activities.
Yeah, and also similar risk of death. Shortly after they were married, Kitsenko was shot and ended up dying from his wounds.
Aww.
Short-lived love for Ludmila there. During battle, Ludmila was shot 4 times. She was withdrawn from battle in 1942 due to the amount of shrapnel in her body accumulated during her service.
They're like, "You keep getting pulled toward magnets, kiddo. We gotta take you off the front line."
Yeah. Her total confirmed kills was 309 Nazis, including 36 Nazi snipers. She holds the record for the highest confirmed kills from a female sniper in all of history. She still holds it.
Yes.
Around this time, America had begun fighting the Japanese in World War II after Pearl Harbor, but the Soviet Union wanted to convince the Allied forces to open up a second front and join the war in Europe. So in 1942, they decided to send Ludmila on a goodwill tour of the U.S. and Canada and England. And I'm sure part of it was just the appeal and novelty of a female sniper, right? Like, so some romantic idea to appeal to the Americans, but ultimately in the service of trying to get them to get their asses over there and help. We're going to leave Ludmila there on board an airplane flying into the unknown territory of America. And I'm going to give you some background on Eleanor Roosevelt.
The biggest badass ever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love her.
Eleanor Roosevelt was born Anna Eleanor Roosevelt in 1884 in Manhattan. Her parents were both wealthy socialites. Her mother, Anna, was extremely beautiful and quite a popular figure in New York high society. Obviously, Eleanor was born into great wealth and privilege. The social circle her parents were a part of was called the Swells, which I thought was interesting. Like, What does that mean? That they're swell and everything goes swell for them? Probably. Eleanor's father, Elliot, was an adventurous man like his brother Theodore Roosevelt. From a very young age, Eleanor was just smitten by her dad. She was fascinated by him and soaked up his attention whenever she could. He'd regale her with stories of his adventures, and he just cut a pretty dashing figure. Mm. And that must have been pretty cool to admire your dad like that. But the thing was that he was a raging alcoholic.
Yeah.
Not worthy of her, let's say. Also from a young age, Eleanor had the distinct sense, and she was correct, that she was a disappointment to her beautiful, jet-setting mother. She was plain girls, ruling the world. See smidgen episode on Jane Eyre. She was a plain girl, and she was shy. She wasn't quite the perfect daughter a glamorous New York socialite would wish for.
Yeah.
Her mother called her Granny because she was such a timid and serious kid.
Fuck you, Mom. Ew.
I'm just imagining Mom like a little toasty saying, "Oh, look at Granny. She doesn't approve."
Yeah, she's the kind of mom who wants to go out with a beautiful daughter who looks like her and have people think they're sisters. That's what she wants.
100%. Eleanor was actually tutored by a French nanny from a young age. She actually spoke French before English. Mm. Even as a child, she was fluent in French as well as English. Eleanor had two younger brothers named Elliot Jr. and Hall.
Eleanor, Elliot, and Hall?
Elliot Jr. and Hall. Let's just name this kid after an architectural feature of our brownstone.
This is our fourth child bookcase.
Yeah. When Eleanor was just 2 years old, she was on the SS Britannic when it crashed into a White Star Line ship. She was fine, but she had to be lowered into a lifeboat. And from then on, she was afraid of ships and the sea for the rest of her life. In fact, Eleanor had a lot of fears as a child. She was afraid of the dark, she was afraid of mice, and she was mostly afraid of her father's disapproval. She later said that she was afraid of everything as a child, and defined her childhood as one long battle with fear.
Aww. But I mean, of course, when you overcome that, that's how you become a badass.
Oh, and spoiler alert, she does. As I said, her father had a problem with alcohol, and he went to live separate from the family at the recommendation of Eleanor's uncle, Teddy Roosevelt. Her father's departure devastated Eleanor, who was constrained to living in New York with her mother and her brothers, and that must have been so boring. Her mother died in 1892 of diphtheria when Eleanor was 8 years old, and later that year her younger brother Elliot Jr. died also from diphtheria. 2 years later, Eleanor's father died of a seizure after drunkenly falling from a window. She was orphaned at the age of 9.
Jesus.
No wonder she had so many fears, like I would too.
Yeah.
At this point, Eleanor was sent to live with her grandmother, who was pretty domineering, pretty much an old fuddy-duddy, and she dressed Eleanor, who was already shy and had trouble fitting in like dark, dour clothing. Like, I'm imagining just browns and blacks all the time. Mm-hmm. Like, probably brown and black together,
She dressed her like Wednesday Addams.
And it wasn't cool back then. Her style of dress was another source of ridicule from Eleanor's peers. She really didn't feel like she fit in. When Eleanor was 14, there was a Christmas party at her grandmother's Manhattan home. Eleanor hated it because she didn't know anyone and she felt just alienated and different from everyone there. So she apparently stood up on a balcony just with her back, really cliche, just with her back against the wall, like awkward and unhappy. And she just watched the dancing and the action happening down below on the floor.
Little did she know that you and I were on a balcony across the hall doing the same thing. If only we had known we were all there together.
Yeah, would have started a club. At one point, a young man walked up to her and asked her to dance. He was her father's fifth cousin, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. At 15, as her mother had requested, Eleanor was sent to Allenswood Academy, a finishing school outside of London. Now, when I heard that, I went, ugh. So I realized that sounds horrible, especially finishing school. She's almost perfect. We just have to finish her.
She needs her crown molding installed. She needs the casings around the windows done. And she needs the landscaping. And then she'll be ready.
And she also just needs a polish with a soft cloth. And she'll be good. Actually, Allenswood Academy was amazing. It was run by this French woman named Marie Souvestre, whose goal was to cultivate independent thinking women who were activists for social change.
Shit, yes!
I know!
They sent her to paradise.
Everything clicked for Eleanor here. She flourished in this environment. She had found her place. Mm-hmm. She was already fluent in French, as I said. So her first meeting with Marie, there's Eleanor and Marie, and then there's all these other basic bitches. And she's standing there going back and forth with Marie in a passionate exchange in rapid French. And all the other girls are just sitting there going, I have no idea what's going on. I don't speak French. I love this moment. This just feels like triumph for me.
It's when you realize, oh, I do have people, and here they are. Yeah. I was just in the wrong people. I'm not wrong. I'm just with the wrong people.
Yeah, it's the moment your world expands.
Yeah.
Because Eleanor at this point realized, like, oh, all these impulses I had toward helping other people, they're not crazy. These aren't crazy impulses. This is actually right, and there are other people doing it. And so it was this moment of triumph for her. Like, she's plain, she's ignored, she feels unseen. And then she meets this woman that's saying, you're right. Mm-hmm. And I'm awesome. And I'm telling you you're right. And you're awesome too. So let's go, mama. And she's like, yeah. On top of that, she gets the satisfaction of sitting there and looking educated and interesting in front of a bunch of those basic bitches who either were or were just like the basic bitches back home in New York. She was later described as, quote, everything at Allenswood.
Oh my God.
She was beloved by her classmates, her teachers. She gained confidence, and she basically unleashed her inner badass.
Yeah.
The school confirmed her principles, her instinct that she should use her privilege for the benefit of the world. I just want to take a minute and appreciate here what a revolutionary idea that probably was. It's hard for us white people now to use our privilege for the benefit of other people. Just imagining in the early 1900s how radical that was.
You know, sort of the more money you have, the more your standing is based on, in all likelihood, the suffering of others, the harder it is. You and I don't have much. It's hard for us, but we don't have much, so we don't have much to lose. So let's go ahead and, but she did. That's amazing.
Then old grandma made Eleanor come home in 1902 to make her social debut.
I want to know where Uncle Teddy was during all of this, because clearly Grandma and Uncle Teddy don't have much in common.
Yeah.
And if Uncle Teddy's like, hey, you're drinking a lot, man, you should probably not be around your daughter and your kids right now, until he died. He was just not the kind of person who actually gave a shit about his niece and his nephew. Hall was still alive, right?
Yeah, Hall was still alive. I don't know. I think that he was somewhat involved, but I don't know that he was necessarily involved to the point where he's counseling what her path should be.
Right. The limit of his involvement was getting the violent alcoholic out of the house. Not unappreciated. Thank you.
Exactly. And I think she did have several years at the school. So it wasn't like she was there for 6 months and grandma pulled her back. She was there for several years. I never understand how courses of study work in the olden days.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times it feels like schools in the olden days, you just kind of go till you didn't go anymore. You know? So did she finish her course of study and was just hanging out, kind of tutoring and, teaching? I don't know. So she went home and she made her social debut, which of course she fucking hated. She still didn't know anyone. Now it was worse because she'd been away for years. Frankly, she probably didn't care because she had shit to do.
That's right, yeah.
Around this time, she's back in New York. She started working at the Junior League. So she was teaching classes in low-income neighborhoods. Here's how she learned about this program and signed up for it. She was sitting around, probably at home. I don't know exactly where she was, but let's imagine she's at home, in the drawing room or whatever. And a male relative's there. And he's like, ugh, can you believe it? There's this program. They're trying to teach poor people. This is crap. And then his big gripe about this program was that it drags women into public life.
Oh my God.
And Eleanor's like, that's for me. So she went. She said that's how she learned about it. So great. In 1902, she was on a train when she ran into FDR. Socially. Given the frequent topics of this podcast, you got to be specific. We talk about disasters a lot.
Yeah.
So So she reconnected with FDR. The two realized they had a lot in common. They began a courtship, and in 1905, they married when Eleanor was 20. Over the years, Eleanor and FDR had 6 children, but Eleanor wasn't really into the mom game. Like, she wasn't taking the kids down to the park and Instagramming, the new stroller she got. She left all that to her controlling mother-in-law, who, wanted to do all that. FDR and Eleanor had a troubled marriage. I don't want to go too much into this because this is the story of Eleanor, not necessarily of FDR. But basically, he had a long-time mistress. Pretty early on in their relationship, she found out about it, and she very quickly realized she was in a loveless marriage.
Aww.
At one point, he considered leaving her for the mistress, but the two of them were kind of convinced that they should just keep up appearances because, at the very least, this marriage of convenience would allow them to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish in the world.
Sure.
I think of it a little bit as they both really valued what they wanted to do in the world, and they decided that this marriage served that purpose. But that's the ultimate purpose, is this social change for her.
Well, and not to discount any of the positive social changes that FDR, pushed for and put into place as president, but my opinion of him drops knowing he did not love Eleanor because she's so awesome.
There's different kinds of loves. I don't really know. Perhaps there was some kind of love that just wasn't romantic. Because a few years later, FDR contracted polio and obviously became paralyzed from the waist down. Eleanor, at that point, took really good care of him. And some people say she actually saved his life. I know they bonded during that period of time, and I think there was at least mutual respect and admiration between them. Eleanor made public appearances on his behalf during this time, during his campaign for governor of New York, and eventually his campaign for president. They were trying to keep his paralysis a bit under wraps, so she would often undertake his public duties, make speeches on his behalf, and things like that to just keep the train moving.
I saw or read a report that the photographers, once he became president, photographers who would sort of take pictures as he would come out to give a speech, if he wasn't walking that day, before it was every day that he was in the wheelchair, they would all put their cameras down and we're not taking pictures.
Wow.
And I heard a story that someone was new to the press gang, essentially, and was taking photos, and another walked up and pushed his camera down and said, don't do that and don't publish those pictures.
Wow. Eleanor worked for the Women's Trade Union League, advocating for a 48-hour work week, minimum wage, and for abolishing child labor.
I mean, that's it. You have to fight for a 48-hour week.
I know.
It's oh my God. Well, and now we have to do that again, right? Because so many of us work so many more hours than that.
In 1927, Eleanor helped found and began teaching at the Todhunter School in New York, educating young women in preparation for college. And also in 1927, busy year, she started a program at Valkill, the Roosevelt estate in Hyde Park, New York, where she opened a small factory where women and farming families could earn supplemental income making traditional crafts.
So what I'm hearing is that Eleanor Roosevelt founded the cottagecore movement.
Yeah, basically. She's the OG cottagecore. In 1933, FDR was inaugurated as president. Eleanor hated the role of First Lady, which at the time was basically just a glorified hostess. Her job was to throw parties. She decided to change what being a First Lady meant. She continued working, teaching, and making speeches, which made her controversial at the time, needless to say. We had a problem with Jill Biden going by doctor. Not something that we've 100% solved, but, She wrote a nationally distributed newspaper column daily. She gave her earnings to charity during FDR's presidency. This didn't quite become as successful as she wanted it to, but she did help begin a community in Arthurdale, West Virginia, for miners who had been blacklisted for union activity. She had wanted the community to be racially diverse, but the members of the town restricted the community to white Christians.
Yeah.
This, however, started to open her eyes to racial disparity. She realized that New Deal programs were discriminating against Black Americans as they received lower rates of relief money compared to the white population. She was one of the only advocates for racial equality in her husband's administration. And he heard all about it.
He's in that chair, man. He can't get away. No, you're going to listen to me.
Yeah. She advocated and fundraised for Black schools, set up a concert for Marian Anderson, a Black singer who had been denied a concert at Carnegie Hall. Mm-hmm. She became an activist for civil rights, and that had obviously not been a part of the role of First Lady before then. I should also say a number of sundown towns were established as part of the New Deal, including a town called Eleanor, West Virginia. Mm. Also, to be fully transparent, in her younger days, she was said to have had anti-Semitic tendencies. I didn't see any evidence of this, but it was said, so I just want to mention that. She did supposedly change her views over time, and she actually was a big part of bringing over some Jewish refugees from Nazi-occupied Europe. She also advocated for lynching to become a federal crime. After the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, Eleanor spoke out against prejudice against Japanese Americans. She opposed her husband's order to send Japanese residents to internment camps, though this was a private opposition, not a public one. Eleanor was a master of media. She held 347 press conferences during her tenure as First Lady.
Jesus.
She banned male reporters from her press conferences, basically forcing newspaper to hire female reporters in order to cover her in the media. If you want my story, you're going to have to hire some women. Okay?
Yeah.
As I said, she wrote a daily column for a newspaper. She wrote a monthly column for a women's magazine, and she was on the radio all the time. As World War II began, Eleanor advocated for European and Jewish immigrants fleeing persecution to be admitted to the U.S., as I said. She also advocated for women and Black communities to be allowed roles in the war effort if they wanted to. And then one day in 1942, she was told a Ukrainian sniper would be arriving in D.C. to begin a goodwill tour. It was important that President Roosevelt drum up public support for a second American front in Europe, and FDR thought American men would be shamed into supporting the war effort by seeing that over in Europe, even the women fight.
So he's aware.
He's aware. Eleanor decided to accompany Ludmila on her tour of the United States. Ludmila didn't speak English, so the interviews and the speeches that she made were carried out through a translator. That must have been a little bit awkward, I would imagine. And the journalists were, and not surprisingly, sexist as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Your boxy uniform makes you look fat. How do you feel about that? Why don't you style your hair? Don't you wear makeup on the battlefield? Don't soldiers take pride in their appearance? She replied that when you're being shot at, you don't really worry about powdering your nose. Now, this whole time, Eleanor was watching this, and I'm guessing that she thought, wow, this all looks really familiar. Damn it. She took Ludmila under her wing, helping her navigate the American press. She taught Ludmila public speaking and gave her a masterclass in ignoring sexist questions from the press. Over time, visiting 43 different cities, Ludmila learned to address a crowd with ease and confidence. She'd sidestep sexist questions with witty replies. Eleanor and Ludmila became close friends. On her tour, Ludmila chided American men for not fighting. She painted a picture of contrast between the American view of her as a curiosity versus her role as a soldier, patriot, and fighter in the Soviet Union. She talked a lot about gender equality. I think the picture she painted was a little bit rosy, though, given her history and difficulty getting in as a sniper.
Sure.
I'm just imagining for American women sitting in the audience how revolutionary the idea of gender equality must have been. We have to start somewhere. And where we start is someone saying that this is even a possibility in our wildest dream.
Yeah.
Ludmila said, quote, "Soviet women have complete self-respect because their dignity as human beings is fully recognized. Whatever we do, we are honored not just as women, but as individual personalities. As human beings, that is a very big word because we can be fully that. We feel no limitations because of our sex. That is why women have so naturally taken their places beside men in this war." End quote. And I'm sure that her efforts contributed to the Americans joining the European front, but it took 2 years after her visit, so.
Yeah, sure.
When Ludmila returned to the Soviet Union, she and Eleanor lost touch. The Iron Curtain fell shortly after World War II, and Eleanor wasn't able to even gain information on where Ludmila was living, so there was just no way for them to carry on a correspondence or anything like that. The two wouldn't reunite again for 15 years. Ludmila's reputation continued to grow, and she became the face of the women's war effort in the Soviet Union. They even put her on a stamp.
Wow.
That's how you know you're important. You're on a stamp. After the war, Ludmila finished university and became a historian as she had originally planned. In 1945, shortly after World War II ended, FDR died of a cerebral hemorrhage. Eleanor returned to Hyde Park, intending to retire from public life, until President Truman offered her a delegate position to the UN. And she, for years, continued to work with the UN on the Committee for Human Rights. And she actually was part of drafting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is huge. Eleanor toured, she made speeches, she received countless awards and titles. I mean, the list of her accomplishments is endless.
Yes, she's Eleanor Roosevelt, you guys.
In 1957, in her role as First Lady to the World, Eleanor visited Moscow. She was determined to see Ludmila. Obviously, relations between the U.S. and the Soviet Union at this point were frosty, so I can't imagine the wheeling and dealing that would have had to have happened for her to get information on Ludmila or arrange to meet her.
Or she's like, thank you for welcoming me to this sitting room. I will be here until Ludmila is brought in. Please provide regular tea and cakes for me.
Yeah. Occupy Kremlin. Eleanor did. She was able to find Ludmila and gain a meeting with her. She was accompanied by a Russian handler wherever she went. Eleanor was allowed to visit Ludmila in her 4-bedroom apartment in Moscow, but she had a handler with her to keep things in line. At this point, this gets really cinematic for me. I'm just going to paint a picture. There the two women are in Ludmila's living room. I imagine them sitting at a small kitchen table. They're talking and trying to catch up, but there's this stick-in-the-mud handler there.
A dude in a heavy bearskin hat and a big overcoat hulking in the background.
And probably like 9 guns hidden somewhere.
Yeah.
Imagine the kind of conversation they're having. It was pretty formal. Suddenly, Ludmila makes some excuse and leaves the table, dragging Eleanor with her, and into her bedroom. Ludmila shuts the door and throws her arms around Eleanor. And quote, half laughing, half crying, telling her how happy she was to see her.
Yeah.
The two caught up in whispers behind the door, reliving their tour together and just generally catching up.
Yeah.
That was the last time the two friends would see each other. Eleanor died at the age of 78 from cardiac arrest in 1960, and Ludmila died of a stroke in 1974 at the age of 58. After her final visit with Ludmila, Eleanor wrote, quote, "Our backgrounds are completely different. Our lives are completely different. We have to see to understand. Such interchanges may lead us to sufficient understanding so that we may be able to work out the kind of peaceful coexistence that our leaders talk about, but seem completely unable to bring about."
Mm-hmm.
And I thought a lot about their friendship. I thought about their differences and their similarities, and I just wonder what drew them together other than circumstances. There is something about feminism that I'm sure brought them together. The kind of world they wanted to live in was very similar.
They wanted the same world. They were both singular in that they were in these completely unusual situations independently. The best sniper in the Russian army is this woman, and Eleanor Roosevelt, the First Lady of the United States, is this feminist, social justice seeking activist. Finding people who with a shared vision when you're in those singular circumstances is probably pretty hard. And when they met each other, like, oh, we have this in common. We have this outsiderness in common.
Yeah. And they have a shared vision, but different roles.
Mm-hmm.
So build an ideal world. Sometimes you have to build something equitable and compassionate. And sometimes you just have to fucking shoot Nazis.
Yes. Yes. That's right.
Nature is creative and destructive. Here you have this person in Eleanor who's building something, who's creating something. But that something needs space. Space that's being occupied by fucking Nazis.
Yes.
So Ludmila's there mowing the path, creating space in our world and in our minds and in our hearts for something other than Nazis. And
Yes.
that space can be occupied by this amazing thing that Eleanor is creating.
That's yes, absolutely. Be the woman shooting Nazis in the head that you wish to see in the world.
Yep. My sources for today's story: there's a piece by Gilbert King for Smithsonian Magazine, an article from Eleanor Roosevelt's My Day column from October 10th, 1957, Wikipedia, of course, and 2 videos, one on Ludmila Pavlichenko and one on Eleanor Roosevelt from the wonderful YouTube channel Biographics. Big shout out to Simon Whistler and the excellent work he's doing there. So that is the story of the unlikely friendship between Ludmila, Lady Death Pavlichenko, and Eleanor fucking Roosevelt.
Yes. Thank you, Claire. That was so good.
You're welcome.
Oh,
Hey everybody, just a note here. We will not be posting a smidgen this weekend, so please join us again next Wednesday for our long episode as usual. Please remember to like, subscribe, and download our episodes.
beautiful. Thanks, everybody, for joining us this week. We will talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Testing. Great. Thank you for listening to It Chooses You. Your hosts are Teresa Sparks and Claire Patton. Our theme song is by Bobby Dart. If you'd like to get in touch with us, drop us an email at itchoosesyoupodcast@gmail.com.